Hey, in today's video we're going to be talking about autism and how best to understand it. So autism is a lifelong developmental disability. So what that means is when you get the diagnosis, that's a diagnosis for life. And to best sort of understand it is a useful tool which is called the Triad of Impairment. So with the Triad of Impairment, this includes 3 points that generally individuals with autism find difficult. So the first point is with difficulties with flexible thinking or imagination. An individual with autism might have special interests or being literal in what they do. What they might find difficult, on the other hand, is when they travel, they might not be able to imagine different points other than the point that they are familiar with, or being able to be sympathetic or empathetic with your point of view or understand your perspective. An interesting fact, autism comes from the Greek word autos, which also means self. So this is sort of emphasizing the fact that individuals with autism find it difficult to empathize with other individuals. The next point is with communication. An individual with autism might take things that you say literally, even though you meant them more metaphorically. For example, the saying, "It's raining cats and dogs," an individual with autism might actually think that you were saying, "It's raining cats and dogs." They might also find they talk about their own interests or something factual, and that doesn't quite fit or is appropriate to the conversation at hand. They might not even have an interest in communicating, even though they're being social. The third point is with social interaction. Individuals with autism find social norms difficult. This can include such things as nonverbal communication. So, for example, when you are talking, an individual with autism might find it difficult to remember the cue that they're supposed to look at you whilst you are talking or whilst they are talking. Another example can include how far or close they should stand whilst they're interacting with you, and what is appropriate physical behaviour to display to you. And again, they might not even have an interest in being social. For an individual to be classed as autistic, they have to score on each of the 3 levels of the Triad of Impairment. However, how they scale on each point can vary considerably. For example, I've worked with adults with autism where one individual has quite good social and communication skills. However, their flexibility isn't quite as good. So, for example, I can have quite a nice, pleasant conversation with them and they'd be doing great social cues. However, if I was to suddenly say, "Right, let's go for a walk," they couldn't imagine that sudden change in their routine, and then they might become anxious or depressed. And on the other hand to that, I've worked with another individual where their flexibility is quite good, but their social and communication skills aren't as good. So you could say to him, "Let's go for a walk," suddenly, and he'd be fine with that. However, he finds it difficult to interact with you on an appropriate level. The autistic spectrum factors in scores of the Triad of Impairment, IQ, and other factors to determine whereabouts a specific individual lies on that spectrum. Now, the spectrum can go from classically autistic, which is the lower end of the spectrum, to Asperger's syndrome, which is the higher end of the spectrum. There's a funny little fact to know that those classed to having Asperger's syndrome generally have a higher than average IQ. Not only do these broad factors of the Triad of Impairment show the variety an individual can have in how autism is displayed in them, they can also have additional difficulties such as additional learning difficulties, mental illnesses, sensory sensitivity, and other factors that can play with the expression of their autism. Hope you find this video useful, feel free to comment with any questions and hit the like and subscribe. Cheers guys.